And so Peter walked out of the cemetery with the fog pressing his face, and felt almost as if with each breath he took that he was grasping to keep his soul from escaping his body. The abuses and the torments he had endured were enough to make anyone feel like a mort vivant, but suddenly he felt inspired. Peter had never held any great belief in supernatural interventions, but on that day he felt as if he had somehow been touched by God. Somehow, in the purgatorial mass of fog, he found a heavenly light, and found the ability to move on. Often in his life he'd been pushed to the limits, but never so far as he was that January. Things changed, and he was ready to embrace life for what it was. And when he died on a cold November day 30 years later, he smiled before his eyes closed, because the fog had settled in, and God was coming for him. It was incredible. Cobalt, what did you think?
It was great. The description of his chest pains was especially vivid. The prose was well balanced. I think it definitely has a voice. You're heavily influenced by Joyce, I find. However, influence is to be expected from a writer of your age. The ending bothered me, however. It seemed out of sync with the remainder of the story, and the description of the migraine was weak, misinformed, the description of someone who's obviously never felt that kind of pain.
Cobalt?
What? Oh, he wanted to know what I thought. Now, for the most part, it was excellent. I was just highlighting the flaws.
Well, I agree with the ending. It was something I added so they'd buy it. So, you mentioned the migraine, though. I've had them, and that's what they felt like to me.
Well, perhaps I misspoke. Peter's having a migraine that is terrible, and the actual physical symptoms, as described, are fine, but what he really fears is death now. He lost his father, and that specter is looming over him as something very real, and you avoid that. You know, it's nothing to worry over. Like I said, it's a fine story. It inspired me to try and write again. The migraine scenario reminded me of my sudden irrational fears of death.
No.
Yes. In my life, I've struggled back and forth between accepting it and fearing it greatly. In my times of fear, suddenly the reality of the fact that I would one day die would come upon me suddenly. I'd feel this fear well up in my chest and sucked down like a vortex through which my whole body would disappear, and I'd think about the blackness. What if that's all it was? What if all you do is remain a sentient, conscious entity wandering around the blackness? That's a terrible thought. It'd be a great story.
Let's write it then. Strike while the iron's hot.